The Hollowing. Chapter 8. A Crack in the Veneer. Sally had soon mastered her newfound gifts. She would use them to sneak into the throne room. She spent what would have been several months, to a human, summoning vines to grow to cover every inch of Hollowing Town. They invaded the castle and smothered the courtyard. Then they moved into the halls and crept into the rooms, until Jack's throne itself was covered in vines. Jack had no time for gardening and couldn't spare a single soldier, for all but Sally were conscripted into the Hollow Army. Jack had a kingdom to overthrow. He had no time for the trivialities of tending to these weeds. Once the town was engulfed in its new growth, Sally sewed a burlap cloak infused with vines so that when she donned her new garment, she could blend into any of the vegetation that covered the city and the castle, inside and out. With a little practice, she found that she could even climb the walls within the palace without being noticed. Anywhere the new growth reached, Sally could hide. From the moment she first made it into the throne room and found her perch on the wall high above the throne that had once belonged to Oogie, she began to tremble. Partly from rage at the usurper who'd slain her love, and partly from the fear that Jack would find her out. Part of her just knew that Jack could sense her, that he knew she was waiting and watching. Sally had feared that the moment she might learn something of use, Jack would spin his unnatural head 180 degrees behind him, and then slowly look up to where she was. He'd then seize her and throw her into a torment that would never end. But that was just a fear. It's not uncommon to imagine your enemies as more powerful than they are, especially when they seem to have the upper hand. But despite her fears, she had found her perch, and there she stayed, day in and day out, watching as Jack would order the creation of various inventions that he and Dr. Kelstein would dream up based on what their spies would report back to them about the North. Little of what went on made any sense to Sally. The warped and deranged minds running Hollowing Town were planning to lay siege to a world they clearly did not understand. But then the day came when a prisoner was brought in, a man wrapped in a red cloak and bound with mystical irons. He was a giant compared to Jack. His voice was deep and powerful. Sally half expected this captive to break his irons with a twitch of his wrists and command the castle walls to crumble with a shout from his mighty chest. He did not. He stood stone still before this pumpkin king. Even when Jack's temper turned to violence when the captive refused to answer Jack's questions, the man stood unflinching in the face of the most terrifying and brutal ruler this land had ever known. Jack had begun striking his prisoner as if he were chopping down a tree, but stopped as abruptly as he had started. The captive held no fear of Jack, and for the first time since his battle with Oogie, Sally saw something she'd only seen once before. Jack began to tremble, ever so slightly. Jack ordered him to be taken away and placed with the others. Sally didn't know where he'd be taken or how many others there would be, but she knew she had to follow. This had to be the opportunity she needed.